Good morning. It's my pleasure to introduce Deputy Secretary of Commerce Don Graves and welcome you back to the Chamber's Global Aerospace Summit. Deputy Secretary Graves has a distinguished record of service in both government and the private sector, and on behalf of Suzanne Clark and all our Chamber members, we'd like to express our thanks to you and the entire department for all your efforts to champion American business both domestically and abroad. So thanks for being here today.
Well, John, thank you so much. It is really wonderful to be back again, a year into your tenure, and especially to be a part of what the Chamber is doing to help drive the commercial space and aerospace industries. I had the privilege of attending the Paris Air Show just a couple of months ago, and it was really a fantastic opportunity to not only engage with our businesses, but to talk to a range of leaders from around the globe about the work that we're doing here in the United States, especially in the U.S. government, to make our space industry more effective, to be able to move at the pace that business moves at, as opposed to making business move at the pace that government moves at. So it was a really great conversation. I am especially excited about the dialogues that are going to occur today and as a part of this event. We've done a lot since the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration to move the ball forward on space and aerospace. I will tell you, I could spend all day talking about the different things that we're doing, and I know that Richard Dalbello from the Office of Space Commerce is going to speak a little bit later, as well as my colleagues from NASA, Pam Elroy, and colleagues from Department of Transportation and FAA. So I won't go into all the things that we're doing, but it may be a first in the history of the government where you have all of these agencies, and the FCC, Chairwoman Rosenworcel, we're all working together. We're having conversations. There's not a turf battle. We're saying, how do we get out of the way? How do we provide the clarity, the transparency, the predictability that companies need to be able to move forward? So I'm excited to be here, and we'll talk about a lot of different things that we're doing at Commerce, but I just wanted to say we're trying to make your lives easier, because we know that for the U.S. to be the flag of choice for industry, we have to give you that support. We have to move at as fast as possible and allow you to iterate and innovate and drive everything that's going on in the commercial space industry.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Deputy Secretary. And you have a personal passion and interest in space, and you've been an advocate for the industry, both government and the private sector, for a long time. You meet a lot of companies, right, both in your travels abroad and here at home. What do you hear? What excites you about this economic potential about space? We haven't unlocked that economic potential, but what do you see? And as you talk to your government partners, what excites you?
The interesting thing is that whereas maybe 40, 50 years ago, space was something that major countries did. It was, it was a novelty in some respects. Today, the space industry is a driver of our economy, from data, critical information, to systems, telecommunications. There's a range of opportunities that I think everyone recognizes. So the space race that used to be a big country approach is now an everybody in on the game approach. And I'll tell you that as of last year, as of 2021, and our Bureau of Economic Analysis has looked at this, the commercial space industry is now about just under 1% of GDP. That is a huge amount of dollars that are flowing into the economy. We know that it's creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. I think it's nearly 400,000 jobs in private industry alone. And as some have suggested, we expect that the economy is going to grow to $1 trillion in the next next 10 years, the space industry. So now is the time for us to be really driving this work, and everyone wants to know how can they be a part of what we're doing here in the United States.
Yeah, no, that's great. And just in backstage, you talked, you're about to hit the road, and you're going to be doing a lot of travel this fall. And the department's been very active from what we've seen from the chamber internationally, setting up dialogues, bringing delegations, and space has becomes part of your agenda as you have these meetings. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work that the department will be doing over the next year with international partners?
Well, we are continuing to host commercial dialogues, and these are opportunities for us, working with our partners across government, to drive engagement and make sure that, again, the U.S. is at the table and American industries at the table in every sector. This past year, we hosted commercial dialogues with Japan and with France. We had an event that the White House put together, the Space Council put together as part of the African Leaders Summit. We're going to have continued engagement with Korea, India, the list goes on and on, a number of African countries later this year. Of course, our continued engagement in Europe. The whole point of this is that, again, we're making sure that if there are opportunities around the world, that American business has an opportunity to play in that space, that as we develop new regulations, that we are engaging with business to make sure the regs are done in a way that aren't overburdensome, that we move at pace. So just as for instance, the licensing of remote sensing satellite systems, we've cleared the underbrush basically, and just 2 years ago, it took about 48 days for us to approve a license. And given the amount of license applications that we're seeing, which is growing exponentially, 48 days is way too long. So now we're down to 14 days. So that's going to make a huge difference for our competitiveness around the world. Yeah,
no, that was huge. And as we see all the value of that data from remote sensing being applied across, all sorts of use cases, that it was a really important change, and we appreciate that. Along the same lines, export control made some announcements in the spring and made some changes there. Can you talk about the feedback you've gotten and the impact you expect to have with that?
Well, you all know better than I do the impact that regulations, regardless of what they are, if they sit on the books too long, there's going to be some changes. And if you don't go back and look at the impact of the rules on industry, reevaluate, excuse me, on a consistent basis, then you're going to end up in a situation where you have major unintended consequences. And that's the case for the MCTR regulations. There's important reasons for us to look at and scrutinize missile technology. Because if these technologies fall into the wrong hands, it's going to cause real problems for our national security. But we also know that sometimes, and in this case, those rules prevent legitimate, good commercial activity from happening. And so we took action to revise the rules to make sure that satellites that had had an important commercial activity that were not running afoul of the intent of the rules, particularly when it related to our allies and partners who were agreeing to the same protocols, that we should be allowing those satellites to be launched with our partners, even if we aren't the ones that are controlling it. So we're trying to do what we can, looking at all of our systems, our processes, to make sure that business has the ability to move quickly, to be able to engage in good activity, and that we're still reviewing all of this to make sure that we're not having the negative impact to our national security at the same time.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for that. We'll get you out here on this. As we look in the year ahead, a lot of activity both up on Capitol Hill and across government. What excites you about continuing all the work that you've done to help, again, provide certainty and predictability to business?
Well, a couple quick things. One, our TRAC system, traffic system for space situational awareness, that's going to provide some great information for providers across the commercial space industry. We've made huge progress there. We've done a bunch of data buys from industry, and our whole intent is to create the type of interoperable system that is streamlined, that is easy to use, and that we're also not crowding out private industry, that we're doing what we need to do to make sure that folks have the certainty, have the information that they need, but that private enterprise is able to move. The second thing, and this is something that you can talk to Chirag when he's here about it, but I think that as an administration, we are making huge progress, led by the National Space Council, at an approach that will make industry's lives much better, that we're going to have a consistent, predictable approach around the way that we do launches, that we approve systems in space going forward. So can't announce anything now, because it's not my job to make announcements. You can talk to Chirag and see if he'll say anything about it. But we are very close to having a uniform approach across government that would give you all what you need to be able to think about launches in the right way, the ways that you think about having systems in space, where government is streamlined and aligned in the way that we do this work.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Deputy Secretary Graves for joining us this morning, and we look forward to having you next year's summit.
Thanks, John.
Thanks,